I'm Dan Harris.
And I'm James Pegrum.
And we're builders of Grip to the Past, and we're here at Steam this year to show off our newest model, which is based on the Peterloo Massacre, which occurred 200 years ago in Manchester. Okay. So the model is based on basically how the St. Peter's Fields might have looked at the time. And it depicts an event, or it depicts events later in the massacre. So, to give you a bit of background, what essentially this is about is that in 1819, in the wake of the Napoleonic Wars, there was an economic depression. There was also a massive change in the population. England had industrialised. People had moved from the countryside into the cities. So Manchester had grown considerably. The problem was that Parliament and parliamentary reform hadn't kept pace, so these people weren't properly represented. And so they gathered on St. Peter's Field on the 16th of August to hear the Speaker, Henry Hunt, speak about parliamentary reform. And they were there to demand parliamentary reform. And so if you have a look at the model, there's some banners here which are based on real ones, which we had custom made. So, for example, repeal the Corn Laws there. That was another thing that was causing bread prices to be particularly high at the time. Vote by ballot over there, that was pretty central to the point being, because at the time, only men over a certain age with a certain amount of property could vote, and they had to do it publicly. So vote by ballot was, the point being, was to make it a private thing, so you couldn't be, bullied by your landowner into voting a certain way. Now, unfortunately, when the government decided to arrest the speakers, they sent in the Manchester and Salford Yeomanry to do it. And the Yeomanry, they were these guys in the blue, on the horses, the bright blue. They weren't real soldiers, they were a militia, so they were mostly landlords and shopkeepers and things like that. And they started attacking the crowd. And this basically resulted in the crowd try and run away. And from their position on the edge of the field, the Manchester magistrates thought the crowd was attacking the yeomanry. So then they sent in their military, their cavalry, in to disperse the crowd. But what the cavalry found when they got there was actually the yeomanry were attacking the people. And because of the nature of the buildings and the streets, the people weren't able to get away, so they were blocked in, trapped, being trampled and slashed by the yeomanry. So what we have here is these guys coming in here. That's the hussars coming in to disperse the crowd, and we've got to a point here where people are starting to basically run away. But there was a big inquiry after the massacre, and no prosecutions were ever brought against the yeomanry, and it was basically a whitewash. And it didn't result in any parliamentary reform either. Essentially, what happened was the government decided to crack down on demonstrations.
So it just had the exact opposite effect that people were hoping.
Yeah, it was, and it wasn't actually until 1832 that Manchester got its own MPs of its own.
And when did this happen again?
So this is 1819.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously we don't know exactly what the Manchester looked like at the time. The street pattern is more or less the same as it is now, and there are some buildings here that we know existed, and they're based on illustrations and engravings that existed at the time. So if we look over there in the central part, that's based on the Quaker house, the Quaker meeting house.
So we could go around the other side and have a closer look at it, I guess.
That existed at the time. And that building, the building's not there anymore, it's been replaced by a later model, but the wall that it sits on is still there, and you can still walk along and see that at the moment. The big church here, that's St. Peter's Church, and that existed up until about 100 years ago, is that right?
Yeah, it's demolished in the early 1900s.
Yeah. So again, there's actual photographs of that building that we were able to use. And this here was a school, it was a Quaker school.
The little red building.
Yeah, again, that's gone now. But the rest of it would have been kind of just little shops, people's houses, and things like that.
A little courtyard here.
Yeah.
That's like a farm. It looks like you got pigs and dogs.
Well, they would have kept animals in the middle of the city at the time because they'd have eaten them. And so we've tried to depict, and I'm going to try and pick these out, it's going to be a little bit difficult, real events that got brought up in the inquiry. And one of them was this one here.
What, trampling a person there? Is it?
Well, trampling a grave. So the cavalry got up into the Quaker graveyard and started basically attacking the people who were there.
It's pretty horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Not a very cheerful thing to depict in Lego, though, is it?
It's not, no. But we also kind of think it's important that we do interpret these things, because there's a temptation to do, you know, fairy tales and knights and things like that, which you normally see. But actually, much of the history that affects us today it originates from this period of the 19th century.
So this is just like a classic Manchester street?
Well, before it all got, you know, pulled down and replaced with modern buildings, yeah.
And like I said, when you're drawing this on like actual drawings and representations from buildings from the time, or is it more?
So we sort of start with this here. So this is a map that appeared in a publication, and we're trying to basically adapt the model and Lego form to that, because it's essentially what it would have looked like at the time. And then so we start. James here is quite skilled with his CAD drawings, so he does a plan with a grid, and we scale it, and then we work from that. But it's only three of us that have built this year. So it's myself and James and Simon Pickard, who is somewhere.
It's behind you.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Just the three of you. How long did it take you to build all this then?
Well, it took me 3 months to build my section. These guys started sooner, but I think if you were going to work on it, you could get it all done in 3 months, basically.
Which is your section?
So my section is that row of buildings there, all the way to the church on that side there.
And the church as well?
No, the church is built by James. Those buildings on that far side and up this corner are built by James. This chapel here is also built by James, because I ran out of parts at that point. And the magistrate's house and the Tudor farmyard, again, which were proper features of the time, they were built by Simon.
Right.
We've also, this is actually a smaller model than we usually build, and we kind of had to do that because of the number of minifigures that we'd have to put in to make it look like a crowd. And if it was any bigger, we'd have to have probably another 500-600 minifigures, and that just wasn't going to be realistic.
So how many have you got in there? Because it looks massive.
About 1,000, I think.
Any little Easter eggs in there that are worth looking at?
Well, again, I mean, it's kind of those things that we'd try to base on real life. So if we actually move around, it's worth showing you some of the banners, because these are some are based on actual documented banners, others are kind of people's interpretations. But the Liberty and Fraternity banner there.
That's French, isn't it?
It is, but of course this is happening after the French Revolution, so a lot of concepts are coming through there. But the Liberty and Fraternity banner is the only existing banner that still exists from the time period, so that's what that's based on.
Right.
The others are, again, repeal the Corn Law. This is stuff that's appeared in illustrations post-event, but they don't exist anymore. So down here we do have some other events depicting real life. So one of the deaths was a lady fell through some railings into a cellar. So that's that. There are other descriptions of people being impaled on trying to climb over the metal spikes that would have existed around these things as well. So that's that.
So you would have had to do a lot of research then?
Yeah, and we've had help with this because we contacted the Peterloo Memorial Campaign and also the authors of this graphic novel. So this came out this year, and so we've been able to we've been able to use this to kind of help some of the scenes that we've got in, because there's a massive amount of research gone into this book. It's illustrated really well, and all the text is actually based on transcripts from people's letters and from the inquiry that occurred afterwards, people's testimony. So it's really good first-hand stuff that we've been able to use. So they've been really great, and they've also helped us out with providing source material for this mosaic here. So this is Henry Hunt speaking on the hustings. So this is from a picture in the novel.
Right. It's very effective. So building it took a few months, but then the research must have taken a lot longer in that case.
Yeah, well, we started researching over a year ago.
Yeah, because we were in Manchester. Yeah, it would have been a good year ago, and we met with the people that were producing the book. So we actually had the opportunity to walk the site, just to get a feel for the size of it and see some of the bits that are left, like the area around the Quaker House. So it's just helpful to be able to picture where the event took its place itself. But yeah, I think between us we did quite a lot of reading. There's been a film that was produced this year and was released on DVD, which was very useful research material. So yeah, quite a lot of reading between us and exchange of ideas and things that we've learnt.
And when you're building it, although you come out with an initial plan, you've always got to do adaptations based on actually how things do work out. Because Lego is a medium and the minifigure is not really a very well good representation of a human being, so you've got to kind of make some adjustments to scale and things like that.
Well, like here, I'm looking at this.
The model should be probably half the size again.
Yeah.
And there was something around 60,000 figures there.
Yeah.
So for us to be able to have done it on the full scale would have been, well, it probably bankrupted us. So we just had to make it smaller, really, to make it representative of Manchester and the event itself.
I think in a way it always is, isn't it? Always you have to have constraints. I was looking at your building design, because Lego's always quite squarish, and your buildings sort of meander a bit. They're not very. There seems to be an angle there.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the things we like to try to do. Is we like to try and make our models look as realistic as possible. So we probably have very few buildings on the grid. It's also our choice of figures. So we've chosen to go with the flesh colour rather than yellow, because we like to try and make it as realistic as possible.
Well, you are creating a historical event, so it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for showing me around. This is an amazing amount of work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And like you say, it's an important part of history. That really, it's a good idea to sort of represent it in a format that actually accessible and gives a bit of history to the visitors.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things we really do find with Lego. It's an incredibly engaging medium, and so it does help generate like considerable enthusiasm with kids and adults in terms of subject matter. So it's ideal for doing that with history.